Yeah, we figured out pretty early on in this process that families were going to be an integral part of the transformation of the young man. So we do a family phone call every week where the therapeutic and clinical team, as well as the operational staff, are on the phone with mom and dad, just kind of walking them through what's going on with the young man and making sure first we're kind of all on the same page with the logistics, but it really ends up being a critical part of the transformational process. Fundamentally what we're doing with these young men is we're taking them across a threshold from childhood to adulthood, which is really a binary shift in a lot of ways, where they're going from mom and dad are morally responsible for me to I am responsible for myself and my choices. And that necessitates change in the dynamic with mom and dad. And that is a tough transition under the best of circumstances. It's a huge developmental transition for the young man, but it's also a huge developmental transition for mom and dad because they've had this child in their lives that they've been responsible for taking care of, and there are certain dynamics that come along with that. And when he's stepping into taking ownership for his own life, they have to shift their tactics and their orientation towards him.
It's an interesting dynamic to have. It kind of goes one or two ways. It's a big shock to families that all of a sudden I don't have contact with my son like I'm used to, and then sometimes I think, God, I don't have to have contact. But I was just thinking about, the change that has to happen, because I don't think families realize how much they really inhibit a kid's growth. Right, it doesn't necessarily have to be things they say. It's just that contact. It's just that easy, escapism. Hey, I can go talk to mom, or dad to figure it out. Man, I hate to say it, but it's mainly moms that kind of interfere a lot of times. But man, when they can buy in and trust that, once a week phone call and limit the phone calls, and something we always tell families is like, look, the message that I know your heart is torn with this, but the message you got to send to your son is you're strong enough and capable to handle, whatever it is to come your way. That's a strong message.
And I think, when on those calls, we always tell mom mainly, hey, don't let your son call and dump his emotional baggage on you.
What do we usually tell them to do if they do that? Hang up.
Hang up. Don't talk to him. Allow him to carry the weight of his own existence.
Well, because if mom is not carrying it, guess who has to?
The young man.
The young man. And if he never has to carry it, he'll never learn how to.
That's right.
Nature is full of examples of this, right? When the bird is being hatched from the egg, you're told, or I guess, biologists say that if you were to kind of break the egg open for them, they wouldn't be strong enough to survive. And fundamentally, that's a lot of what happens with a lot of our kids is, families insist on breaking the egg off for them, and they're not strong enough to survive on their own. And, fundamentally, they have to face the challenges and rigors of life, or they're never going to be strong enough to survive on their own.
Well, the families ask, what do I need to do? What do I need to do? Really just don't rescue your son.
Yeah.
Actually take a break, step out and let some other people step in and, guide and direct your son. But when you do have the opportunity to have that phone call or that interaction with your son, hey, look, don't rescue your son. That's the biggest thing that you could do to help your son to become the man that, we desire him to be.
And often we have to explain to parents why.
Right.
And the why behind that is when I rescue my son, the implicit message is you can't do this. Now, sometimes that's a necessary implicit message.
Sure.
If my 6-year-old gets in my truck and starts to try to start it and drive it, I've got to rescue my son. And I've got to send the message that you're not capable of this. This is not developmentally appropriate for you.
But go ahead. And I was just thinking, kids will all the time, try, and they get this. They know we're going to do this. This is kind of part of our, practice here at the shed. Mm-hmm. So they're going to implement tactics to undermine it, to get to your heartstrings. And that's where the challenge for families is. I think about that kid that plotted, having somebody, hey, when I'm on the phone, yell that you're going to beat me up. It freaks mom out. That's scary,
Right.
But that's some of the trust stuff that you talked to about, we got to have with families, are you going to unite with us?
Well, and that's the deal, is most of our young men are cooperating with mom or dad in this helplessness posture. And so they have a narrative that allows them to not have to face the hard thing. So wait, mom, I'm too broken to really do this. I'm too emotionally traumatized. I'm too fill in the blank. And, because of the nature of who we are as parents, we want to swoop in and rescue them, but it keeps the bird from being strong enough to ever fly.
And the crazy thing for me is young men, they're mad that mom's treating them like a little boy. But in the same sense, they're like, hey, mom, I need you to fix this.
Right.
So it's and then families which one am I doing? Am I allowing him to grow up and mature, or am I fixing the problems for him?
That's right. One of the analogies we use all the time for this is the young kid climbing the tree. I have a 6-year-old, he wants to climb trees. Very often my wife gets nervous about, well, are we gonna let him do this? He could fall and break his arm. Well, he might. you know, and the reality is we have to make a decision. Do we want a boy who can climb trees or a boy that's never had a broken arm?
Well, the interesting thing too is God, allows that to heal stronger.
That's right.
And that's the thing. God's got to be a big part of this, right? Like, and we're big believers in that. And something, families, always worry about us, pressuring their kid with the spiritual emphasis, and it's really not about that. It's about that relationship, showing them what God's done in our lives. Like, look, you can make mistakes, you can get hurt, but you can come out better because of it. But that's really, this is a big challenge for families to accept, right? Like, is God going to be a part of this picture? Is God going to be a part of our lives as we, pour in these young men? Because that gets lost for a lot of these families.
Yeah. It makes me think of, our young men as they start getting a job or getting their license or going to school, and they look at us with these, deer in the headlight look of like, can I do this? Like, do I have what it takes? And the core of what we tell these young men is you have what it takes. You are enough and you can do it. Like, and once they believe that themselves, like, the success rate is outrageous.
Well, because they were designed to carry that weight, and when they get a taste of their ability to do it, the sky's the limit.
That's right.